pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do a roll call, please.
Councilmember Clerk. Here. Councilmember Collings.
Here.
Councilmember Stackflat.
Waiting on the train.
Councilmember Globman. Here. Mayor Redmond.
Here. All right, seeing no special presentation or announcements, we'll move on to public comment. If anybody has anything they want to talk about that's not on the agenda, come on up.
Araya, half of the Yeah movement. Just want to say we had our community dinner last Saturday, and I want to give a special thanks to Casey. He did show up, and he spent a long time talking and engaging with all the citizens that came and showed up, and I feel like it was great. I feel like you actually got a lot of insight to what the people want, which is awesome, and that's partly what we're doing it for. And people learned a lot. And we had a tiny house right there on site, so everyone got to go in and tour it and see, try it out. Would this work for me? Would this work for my mom? Whoever. So I feel like it was a really good opportunity, and we look forward to continuing to do those in the future. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Aloha. Afa, the other half of that one. And yeah, same. Special thank you to Jeffrey. Last month, came over, helped the people. Special thank you to Casey. Came over Saturday. We did do a tour on a tiny house on wheels. We had to move locations because of truck problems to pull the tiny house to Soul Connection, so we moved it, and it was at where's that rad camp? Where's it at? Nazarene, the Nazarene Church. So we had a tiny house on wheels, and then we had that new remodel that we helped paint, and the school is now over there, and we had a great commercial kitchen and a good gathering, about a dozen people, about 6 kids, a kitten. It was really good. I don't know how many questions whatever it was, but it was like 30 or 50 questions. It was a lot of questions. The people were really active and very appreciative. And so, yeah, just super special thank you. A lot of big ripples going on. I think it was last week or week before. I went to City Council of Weed, and it was the same week, the week before we had Roseburg going on. And so I know we have a lot of families here in Mount Shasta that also get the ripple effect. Erickson's, logging, all my buddies everywhere. And so, as one thing ripples off, it'll hit our city, it'll hit the whole county. I know we got big plans, changes going on, so extremely grateful for the affordable housing movement, income-based qualified with the townhomes, worker-based qualified with the intent to purchase with powers, and the alternative housing movement and push that we are doing together. I really think we're flagshipping the whole county, to be honest. I've pretty much seen everything of everyone in every group in the whole county for 6 months, and I'm gonna throw a small flag on Mount Shasta and say, we're very active. We're doing the very best that we can all together. Special thank you to Police Chief and Fire Chief and Police Chief for the ongoing overtime, the ongoing stresses of volunteers and staffing. Special thank you to all the grant writing staff that we do have that keeps our whole town alive, and a super special thank you to the planning commissions and our council that is very active. Tonight's an exciting night. We're making history together, and we're very grateful, very thankful. Aloha.
I was looking forward to coming over and having some tacos with you guys, but with the change of venue, I couldn't be that far away from work. But I know, I was looking forward to tacos. It's my favorite food group. Anybody else? Any other comments? All right. Shut down public comment, bring it back to council and staff. Todd, if you want to kick that off.
Sure.
Okay. Everybody's favorite committee has now had their last meeting, the Library Expansion Committee ad hoc. We got final approval on the 100% design drawings from that group, and I had an RFP written. It was determined that we should be putting out a request for qualifications. That's written now. One of the things we're running into in talking to Ken and putting the word out there is, when we put this RFP out, what are we asking for? Are we looking for a GC, or are we looking for a construction management firm? And, you know, I've always viewed it as something that is a hybrid that includes both. Sorry, I know this is a lot of detail, and I'll land the plane. But did some digging. Apparently, there's something, you know, the kind of firm known as integrated project delivery, and they tend to be in larger cities, the Bay Area and Sacramento. But Ken's got feelers out there to see if there's anybody more local that does that kind of work, and then we get that information, and then we'll publish that RFP. And what that will do for us is get numbers on what our respondents say it's going to cost to take these 100% design drawings and phase it, potentially phase work where we're doing the interior, acoustic tiles and HVAC, and the front of the structure, and phase 2 where we're extending the structure and creating a conference room. So that way we know what we're in for a total cost, and whether the money the library tax advisory folks have collected is enough for us to chase a loan to pay for the whole thing, or whether we need to do fundraising or just phase the work, and we do the second phase and we have the money. So that's that. The work with the landing and the Powers Group is continuing. They have been talking to a group called the Rural Community Housing Development Corporation. They do like Danco's work, and they're saying that the sweet spot to get these things to pencil right now is about 40 units. And they're working with John and Brian Powers to come up with a proposal. In the meantime, they're searching out where sources of PLHA grants and low-interest loans and other potential funding opportunities that we can tap into are. And I made a call to Madeline Bryan over at the county to see if she's got some insight on it. And I also suggested to John and Brian today, as much as we've had some issues with Danco, they're experts at actually chasing down the funding themselves. You know, in some cases they've cut corners and there's been some friction, but they always deliver a good product. But I reached out to them to see if, you know, who's going to compete, and, you know, see who will get us off the block more quickly if we choose Danco, with some guarantees that they're going to meet their deadlines and not expect us to bend the rules for them. So we have that. That is the work that they're doing now. They're thinking about what happens on the west side. We talked a little bit about what we do to bring in workforce housing and the kind of concerns that may create more living wage jobs. And again, Bob Kendrick up in Central Point, they've been in contact. John Power needs to pick up that thread again and talk about him being down here. And, you know, when the time comes, they know about Laurel Harkness and her work, and we'll put those two together. And they've all been informed about what each party does. And we'll make this work. There's a lot of moving parts. And then finally, you all may remember a gentleman named Eugene Sway, who is, you know, how do I phrase this? Let's just say he's on the avant-garde edge of development. But I find I've gotten to know him over a number of years. He's an internationally known architect. He has been planning, and he's had limited success getting his project off the ground here in the past. He's gone back to the drawing board. Basically, what he does is, if we get this approved, it's going to be something that is something Mount Shasta's never seen. Essentially, what he does is biomimicry. His plan is to construct a pretty large, community center, convention center, centered around ecology and sustainability, with the entire building being off the grid. In other words, they use solar, they use wind power, they recycle gray water, sink water and from urinals, toilets, and in solid waste, and use it to make sure that the building is off the grid and creates all its own electricity. The structure as proposed is buried 40 feet underground and extends above ground and built into the surrounding grade to kind of cut down on the profile of the structure. And it has some really interesting designs. It's going to be pretty far out. They're in CEQA right now, and their CEQA guru is and he knows what he's talking about, is our favorite environmental litigant. So it's going to be interesting, but the stuff the guy does is pretty amazing, but I don't know how the Planning Commission is going to react to it, given that it's so far out of the realm of a traditional development. The design packet normally for a project is about this thick. I'm imagining that his packet of architectural drawings is going to be extremely thick. It's going to be a lot of work. Anyway, that's what I've got.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a quick update. So we did have an incident within the vicinity of Mount Shasta where a deputy came across a car up on 80 Circle, thought it was suspicious, went to contact them, found out that they were committing a burglary, residential burglary in the area. Pursuit ensued. While the car was fleeing from the officer, from the deputy, the driver of the vehicle fired several rounds from a 20-gauge shotgun, striking the patrol vehicle. Chase came down McLeod Avenue, Old McLeod Avenue, and then out of Mount Shasta 89 and over to McLeod, where the vehicle crashed out. Our officers got up and assisted in the pursuit and subsequent perimeter. Our K-9 was called out for assistance. Sergeant Moore went over and assisted with the search for the two suspects in the vehicle. Later that day, he was relieved by Sergeant Pretty, who assisted the Sheriff's Department and was one of the officers that observed the subject go into a house, the perimeters put on. And after about 4.5 hours, the subject was taken into custody without further incidents or shots fired. And they ended up catching the female subject the next day in the same house. So just get out there. Our involvement was very peripheral. There was no, other than the one time he was driving down the road really fast, leaving town, there was no immediate threat to any schools or any of that in town, and it left very rapidly. And then the second thing is, we're in the hiring process. We're going to be down 2 officers as of the 20th. So this weekend was the graduation ceremony at the COS for the 15th Police Academy. So myself and Officer St. Clair, we went there and personally recruited all those that hadn't been hired. So we're hoping to get a couple applications because it would be nice to just have them ready-made walking in. Other than that, that's it.
You know, it's hard to follow up after talking about a 40-foot hole and a police chase, and we do have a couple of vacancies. If there is a silver lining to the Roseburg fiasco, we may get some good applicants for a couple of our public works vacancies.
Who's open? Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Some sad news from a longtime resident that lived here, started with the fire department and went through the paramedic program locally. Him and his wife were killed in a car accident off of Highway 50. He's a battalion chief for Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District. I just wanted to bring up that he originally started with the fire department here as an explorer and became one of the captains here before he transitioned his life to Reno area, where he became his statue there. So we are also in the process of trying to fulfill that fire engineer position. So we'll see how that goes.
Corey, any status on the kids in that crash?
I heard one of the kids was released from the hospital. The other kid was still in fairly bad shape in Reno. He's doing better, but has an uphill battle with some of the injuries sustained.
That's sad.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of continue the theme, I do need to give you notice that we're having another separation in our department. Jody Polk will be retiring after 20 years or so of service. So we will have we have some vacancy as well. Her last day will be mid-January, and we're recruiting for the open accounting assistant position right now. We have some interviews this week, so just wanted to update on that. And got to go to a League of California Cities Finance Institute training last week, and it was very good. I met some great people, and I also connected with Jill from Weed, which was nice. They're going through very similar processes that we are with Springbrook. So it was a good training, and have some things to think about and hopefully move forward this coming year.
Councilors, any comments? No? All right. We will move on to, where is it at? Outside meetings, if there's anything to report, Todd? Or committee updates, I should say.
I don't. I didn't sit on that, so it's one individual. Okay, so one individual from the beautification committee resigned, so therefore we don't have a quorum right now, so we need to go out and see what we can do to, fill that slot. There has been, I think we talked about some consideration of combining beautification and DEAC, and I think that there's a lot of overlap, but I think that if we can keep them separate, I think it would make more sense, but let's see who we get.
Okay. And just a reminder to the public, there are currently several vacancies on the committees, 3 on the beautification now, 2 on DEAC, and 1 on the planning commission, if anybody wants to apply. Casey?
I just have a point of clarification for that. To serve on any of the committees, I guess, but specifically the beautification, does a person have to reside within the city limits?
Not for this vacancy.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. For those of you who didn't hear that, the answer was no. All right, moving on to consent agenda. City manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, November 24th, 2025, regular meeting. B, approval of disbursements for accounts payable, 11/24 of 2025 and 12/3 of 2025. Total gross payroll and taxes for the periods ending 11/26/25 and 12/11/2025. C, police department monthly report. D, approval of job descriptions for fire captain and firefighter. E, police K-9 retirement. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve consent agenda items A through E by title only.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right. And now moving on to the Sisson Museum presentation. Todd, you have the floor if you want to make the...
Yeah, excuse me. So we have the Sisson Museum here, Gene, to give us a presentation on the museum and the importance of it, and to remind council and citizens that last year and in previous years we have provided a donation to the museum amounting to $5,000.
Hello, my name's Jean Nels. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. So in order to talk about this subject, I thought first of all we would talk about why a museum. Do you all have the slides on your screens? Great. So why a museum? What is so important to a museum for a community? And it all started back in 1979. They were going to deconstruct the historic fish hatchery building, and our community members, especially people from the Chamber of Commerce, said, we don't have a community museum. Who's going to save our history, share our history? And they came together, a lot of volunteers, petitioned the state of California, and they said, all right, we'll let you use that as a museum. And that was in 1979. It took them 4 years and lots of money and lots of volunteers, and they changed that historic building to the museum we have today. And if you've driven by it, you've seen that entry there, and that was also done by volunteers. Art Horvath with the stonework, and Maroney Construction, and our own Jim McChesney here, our board president, making the front door sign. The entry sign. So when we were going to do this museum, they had to think about the name of our museum. And just like the town of Mount Shasta's had 4 different names, and if you come to the museum, we'll teach you about that, I would like to invite all of you to come to the museum. I'd love to give you a personal tour. I'm very proud of what we've done there. So one of the names they thought of first of all was to call it the Sisson Hatchery Museum. Well, the only problem with that, people would walk in and say, well, where's the hatchery stuff? And this is more of an historical museum. So the next name they came up with was just Sisson Museum. And so people would walk in the door and say, well, what's a Sisson? So the next name we came up with was Mount Shasta Sisson Museum, which honors the Sisson family, some of our first settlers, and also that it's here in the town of Mount Shasta. Names are important, just like you know. So like when I was contemplating going to the Air and Space Museum, I thought, well, that's nothing. Air and space, there probably is nothing there to see. Okay. All right, so we opened in 1983 after 4 years of lots of work. And one of the things we worked on, we worked on landscaping, and that was with the Rotary Club. We have partnerships with many organizations in the city. And when we opened, it now looks like this after 42 years, so very different. All that volunteer work has really made a lot of changes. The opening night, so for some reason this does not seem to be working well. What? Okay. Okay. The exhibits have changed a lot through the years. If you look at some of these photos, you'll see that it's pretty basic to start out with, photos and some writing. And as we went on. We have covered lots of subjects that are important to our town. Logging, skiing, the mountain, that cone, which some of you are familiar with, used to be on the top of Mount Shasta. It's now in the museum. Also, we've done things like caves. Lava tube caves are a big thing around here. That was 2007. We've also done the story of the Italian people, which if you've seen all of the stone buildings in town, a lot of history there. Plus, you know, the wine they made and Marconi's Market, things like that. Then water. And we've covered water many times, starting in 2010, and we just did another 3-year exhibit ending this year. Also, the lenticular cloud exhibit. We thought this was going to only be a 1-year exhibit because our museum does changing exhibits. This exhibit has been so popular because just like on Wednesday, was that the day that it lasted the whole day long? It's just incredible, these amazing clouds we get around here. So this is our 3rd remodeling of that exhibit, and we get local photographers to submit their photos, and that's what is shown in this display. Also, of course, we have to cover the lore and the legends of Mount Shasta, all the spiritual things. You know, Mount Shasta, magnet for many people. So that was one of the exhibits we did in 2018. Of course, we have to save the history of our area. And one is when I-5 went through here. So we did the 50-year history of building I-5. Then we also had to cover the history of the building of Lake Siskiyou. And that was an incredible exhibit. And all of these exhibits, we archive them. And people come to the museum and say, well, I missed that. We give them a binder of that information so they can see it, even though they weren't there during that year. So one thing you noticed when we first started, it was a pretty basic, pretty bare bones exhibits. So we decided to do something about it. I got my museum studies degree. I am a volunteer. I've been volunteering since 2007. I went and got my museum studies degree because I wanted this to be a first-class museum that we would have for our community. So in the first room, we changed it. We got a mural painted. We had people like Chris Schneider come and do interactive displays and things so that it makes history more real. So this is what the first room looks now. It's the history of Mount Shasta, starting with the indigenous people up to present day. There's photo frames that show changing photos. The museum store provides 1/3 of our income, and you can see when we first started, look at that, just bare bones. She's had a little just opening there with some books for sale. And through the years, we've changed it, and so now, this is what it looks like, and people come and do their Christmas shopping here. And all of the products have some kind of relationship to the exhibits that we have. Lulabelle, which the city let us have, Frank Mello, our fire chief, restored that great old fire engine. It's a very popular place for photos. This is what it used to look like, and now we had a mural painted behind it, and this mural features some of the most famous fires that happened here in our town. I don't know if you know, but it burned down 11 times in 30 years from 1887 to 1917. So we tell the history of what's happened. And just like the beginning, our volunteer fire department, we depend upon volunteers like you are all volunteers with your time. Then the second room is now a geology exhibit. They're short 1-minute videos in the touch screen that people can learn about the geology of our area. How was Castle Crags made? I don't know if some of you know, but it's fascinating. How was that mountain made? How about the glaciers, mud flows, things like that? You can crawl through the lava tube cave. The third room talks about the railroad history around here, which is really important. That's why our town is situated where it is. And there's an interactive place that they can drive the locomotive. The event room, which when I came on, this is what it looked like, just really bare bones. We used to do quilt shows in there. And then we got a grant in 2012 to to put a 12-foot screen, a sound system, a surround sound system, an LCD projector, and we now have presentations in that room, and changing exhibits. Every year that room changes entirely. The presentations, people get to sit in comfortable chairs like the ones you're sitting in. Mike Rodriguez convinced me how comfortable these were. And people come and we do one presentation at least a month. It brings in a lot of people with discussions of community issues, like Eugene Sway came and talked at the museum, and we had Tom Heseldens come talk about changes in the town. So we have a lot of those kind of presentations happening. We also are very family friendly. A lot of families will tell you they come to our museum because there's something for people of all ages. Matter of fact, we've just recently started a partnership with First Five. I heard her come talk to you a couple weeks ago. These kids' activities, we feature them in all of our exhibits, and we also have special days that we set up that back room and we have lots of volunteers come do the different activities. But every room has things for the kids to do. But the back room, we do science at the museum, and there's experiments set up for the kids to do. We have lots of volunteers to do that. We have many volunteers. Like, look at how many volunteers are there for the science day that you see right there, and the families doing it. We also have experts who come and, please go back one slide. Bill Hirt is he's a geology professor. He comes and talks to us about the geology of the area. Bill Meese is a great historian. Did you know that all geology books say that, or many geology books used to say Mount Shasta erupted in 1786 or 89, and Bill Meese proved that those geology books were wrong through his research? It's just incredible, all these experts that volunteer for our museum. It's a real important resource. So, we need to ensure our future. We need to share and save Mount Shasta's stories. And that's why we ask you every year for $5,000. It's a donation, but our museum really spends a lot more money than that, as you can imagine, to put on these kind of equality exhibits. Our dedicated volunteers and people's donations help us make changing exhibits, educational tours and field trips. It's fun, it's a center for the community, it's attractive, informative, it's fabulous. We depend upon volunteers, we depend upon donations. So if anybody's listening to my speech tonight, if you want to volunteer, there's many things you can volunteer for, and if you want to donate, we have memberships available, $25 a year, not much, but $25 a year times 1,000 people. I mean, you can imagine that would really mount up. So if any of you want to volunteer or donate, please let us know. And one thing we're very excited about, that last year, DFW, we negotiated for 5 years, and because our lease was up on that building, we don't pay rent, which helps us to survive. And we asked community members to send in letters, and the state said they were overwhelmed by how many people sent in letters saying, yes, this is an important community resource. Matter of fact, one of the DFW employees wrote a 3-page letter saying, you've got to let them stay. This is such a valuable resource. So, of course, statistics also help. So I'm telling you this, that we have 14,000 average visitors a year. We've had almost 600,000 visitors in our 43 years that we've been in business. And we do surveys. We let people fill out these surveys. They're anonymous, but you can see I compiled them for the last 2 years, from 2023 to 2025. There were over 1,500 responses, and we asked them yes/no questions. Did they learn something new? Are they likely to recommend the museum to others? And did they like the interactive opportunities? The blue is yes, the orange is no. So you can see the amazing response. And then, of course, we ask people for comments. If you come and we have a visitor comment page. Google, you'll read great comments about us. Yelp, fantastic museum. So yes, we're asking for your support. Oh, there should be one more slide. And I guess it didn't, oh, there it is. Why a museum? I started with that question, so let's end with that. We provide unique learning experiences. We preserve our history. We provide a space for community gatherings, dialogue, and inspiration. We contribute to the local economy, which I know I've been listening to your city council meetings online. I sit at my computer at home and watch the meetings. We attract tourists. If you go on to look at our Google reviews or the 10 best things to do in Mount Shasta, we are definitely one of those things to do. So we're asking for your support, and I know about how you're in the red, but if you can find those funds, that would be great. And if not this year, perhaps another year, because where would our community be without our museum? Thank you.
Council debates. This is self-serving. This is something I wanted to bring up in comments, but I forgot about. But it dovetails with this. A month ago, I learned that this year it was the 100th anniversary of the incorporation of the city of Mount Shasta. So, and we'll see what we can do potentially to capitalize that on that in this next year without looking foolish, because it'd be the 101st year. But we thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Any questions?
I was just going to open that up if anybody. All right. We'll open up to public comment and then we'll come back.
All right.
If anybody wants to speak. All right, seeing nobody wanting to speak, we'll bring it back. Do I have a motion?
I just wanted to say that I'm one of the, did you say 600,000 that have visited? Yeah, I've more than once. And, and my grandkids really love the place. So I don't know if you remember us when we came in, you were there. So I'll move to approve a donation of $5,000 to the Mount Shasta Historical Museum, or Sisson Historical Museum.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed is none. Thank you very much, as always.
And I didn't realize we were skipping over the comment from us. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate every talk that I've been to there. They've all been really great. So just keep them up.
Oh, what a great Christmas present. Thank you.
And I look forward to coming by for a tour. All right, moving on to number 9, Safety Action Plan presentation. Todd, you have the floor.
Okay. It's been well over a year now that the city received federal grant dollars through the Safe Streets for All pot of money, and we hired Kimley Horn to conduct a safety action plan on behalf of the city. And they've been up here canvassing our streets, looking at all of our intersections, interviewing people, meeting with different groups to find out where problem intersections are and what those fixes may be, whether they are actual geometric fixes in terms of engineering, whether they are policy fixes, more enforcement, et cetera. And we now have the draft final safety action plan, which is in the packet, and they're here the second go-round to walk through, the project and their findings.
We're waiting for somebody to jump in.
So take it away, Kimley Horn.
Okay.
Sorry, apologies about that. The computer froze up as soon as I was trying to unmute. But thank you, everybody. We're definitely looking forward to talking to you about this. It's been an exciting project to work on, and got some pretty good findings, I think. So I want to move forward to the next slide. So we'll go over quickly just what the background of the safety action plan is, why we conducted it and why it's important for the city. Then we'll talk about a little bit what we saw in the analysis, what we looked at more closely, and then what we actually came up with as recommendations in the long run. So first of all, the Safety Action Plan is the gateway the city has to a lot of funding opportunities for both state and federal grants. So the plan really lets us look at what's going on in the city roadways, how are people driving, what kind of intersections and roadway segments do you have, what kind of traffic control is there, and how does that align with best practices. So we took a look at all those things. We looked at the crashes that have been occurring in city streets for the last few years and what kind of trends they have. One of the good news here is that you don't have a really large number of crashes as you're a smaller city, but we do want to make sure we're limiting those ones that are occurring. As Todd mentioned, we talked to quite a few people in the city, out in the public, out on the street, at some events that we had throughout the year. And then we looked at a number of different project recommendations that we could do, and we'll talk a little bit more as we move forward. But really the goal here is to figure out what are the most effective safety improvements the city can make, and how do we prioritize those moving forward. So ultimate goal, reducing serious injury and fatal crashes. So over the study period, the city fortunately had no fatal crashes and not a lot of serious injuries. So that makes the job a little bit easier than it would be in some bigger cities. But there are definitely some places where there's some potential needs, and a lot of community members brought those to our attention. And then we also want to look at the best practices and how connectivity works in the city, how we can make it easier for people to walk and bike around so that you don't have to drive from one store to another. And again, to prioritize those improvements as we move forward. So in the Safety Action Plan itself, we look at the leadership, commitment, and goal setting. So one of the things state and federal governments are looking for is that commitment to achieve zero traffic deaths by a horizon year. So you're well on your way to that. And so we've set this up to align with what Caltrans and other agencies have been looking for to make sure that you have perfect access to all those grants. What's the planning structure in place? So how do we make sure this plan gets implemented well as we move forward? And then that analysis component, looking at the actual crashes that have been occurring and where they are, what types of crashes they are, so that we can recommend good improvements for that. That engagement with the public and with key stakeholders, so that's city departments, city staff, county sheriff, Caltrans, other agencies that have an involvement in the roadways. What kind of policies and processes might need to be looked at again, and that can be staff resources, that can be educational programs, all kinds of things like that. And then we get through that strategy, recommendations, and then how do we monitor the plan as it's being implemented. So what does the city get out of having the Safety Action Plan? So one thing to keep in mind is the federal government has what they call the safe system approach. This was really pushed by the prior administration, and it's something that's actually continued to be important to FHWA as we move forward. So it's based on the 5 pillars and their related principles. Death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared. Safety is proactive. Redundancy is crucial. And to get to those things, we need safer people, safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, post-crash care. So all of those factors were considered as we developed this plan. All right, so just a quick look at your crash data. On the left-hand side, we see how the different types of crashes that have been occurring over the years. So usually somewhere between 4 and 6 crashes, with the exception of 2020, where we had COVID shutting things down. So there wasn't a lot of activity on the roadways during that year. So we've been fairly consistent in the amount of activity as we move forward, a little bit higher in 21 and 22 though. When we look at the injury levels, so those blue ones are the ones we're the most concerned about. Those are the severe injuries. That basically means we had lights and sirens, somebody didn't walk away from the crash, they required some sort of urgent care and potential lifelong impacts from those crashes. The more minor injuries and complaints of pain, so there were injuries involved. We don't have the information on just the vendor type crashes where there was just an exchange of insurance, but no actual injuries. But we do know there were several of those as well over those years. When we look at the span of the year and how things are, I'm sure you guys would be very shocked to see that August is your peak crash month. So that's when we have a lot of people touring through and folks that aren't as familiar with the roads. And then we see another little spike in January when you're more likely to have some snowy conditions on the road. So I don't think any of that is very surprising, but it's something for us to keep track of, because we always have to remember that in Mount Shasta, a lot of your traffic isn't the local residents. We have a lot of tourism as well. So we get people here that are just visiting. There's also a lot of truck traffic through the city. So those are all different things that we were looking at. The map on the right shows you where those injury crashes occurred. So we see obviously the downtown areas where you have the biggest concentration, and then a few kind of in the farther north and south of the city. When we looked at all those different crash patterns and what was going on relative to the state, first thing we have to remind you of is that the number of crashes in the city is quite low. So we have to take all this information with a bit of a grain of salt. Every year this could look different, but at least for this particular study period, intersections were where most of your crashes occurred. So that means crashes usually between two vehicles rather than somebody just running off the road and hitting a pole or something like that. When we look statewide, it's about a quarter of the fatal and serious injury crashes, because those ones where people run off the road themselves tend to be the worst crashes. But it's a little over half in Mount Shasta, which is not uncommon for an urban area. So aggressive driving is the second category. So that can mean either vehicles speeding above the speed limit, as noted by the responding officer. It could also mean traffic that is following too close, doing tailgating. It can mean ignoring the traffic signal downtown or running through stop signs. So there's lots of different factors that can lead to that. Mount Shasta is quite a bit higher again than the statewide average in those characteristics. So these are definitely crashes where somebody was willfully disobeying a law. And then lane departures. So those are the ones I was just talking about. You're lower than the statewide average, but they're still a pretty good number. And that means somebody actually left the lane, they went off the road usually and hit an object on the side of the road or rolled over. So we definitely don't like to see a lot of that. So when we looked at the crash data and tried to determine which locations had the most interesting characteristics for us to explore, this map shows where those are. So we had went as far north as the Spring Hill Road intersection near the I-5 interchange, and then as far south as Mount Shasta Boulevard near Mountain View Drive, and those segments down that way. We also looked along Lake Avenue up into the Everett Memorial Highway area, and then we also looked along McLeod Avenue. That's a pretty tight little corridor and a lot going on there. So we walked all of those areas, we observed traffic, and we took some notes on the various things that we could see that might be things we could do in the future. For engagement and collaboration, we did a few different things. We attended events out in the city. We collected information. You'll see the little boards we had where people could put their stickers on. We also had a website that people could visit and put their comments on in that form. As we can see here. So we got a fair bit of input on the events we went to. We didn't get a lot of people visiting the website, despite a lot of distribution of our flyers with the QR codes and everything. But all in all, we did get some feedback and some ideas from residents. A lot of them really wanted to talk to us about specific things. So the common themes are the missing sidewalks. There's a lot of places where you have to walk in the street a little bit or walk through the mud on the side of the road. There was a lot of folks that wanted to see a little more for bicycles. And then potholes and lack of safe connected routes, places where snowplows can block things were all issues. We heard most about Mount Shasta Boulevard between Chestnut and Water Street, the intersection near Bearville and the Sportsman's Den. We had people talking about pedestrian injuries there. Pine Street and West Lake Street. Some other places that we heard about were Alma and Chestnut, McLeod and Mount Shasta and Ream. That's a complicated intersection there, and then along the Everett corridor, and then a few others. As far as top suggestions, we had continuous bike lanes where there's gaps, or new bike lanes in places where they're not there. Was some interest in roundabouts at actually a few different locations. And there were a few that looked like they could potentially work there. And then obviously the sidewalk gaps again, along the Mount Shasta Boulevard corridor area, especially along Lake Street and Washington Drive area were the prime locations for those. Again, we did visit in the field. We took a lot of photos. We watched how traffic was working, where there's potential conflicts between vehicles that wasn't well regulated or anything else like that. And then we took input from anybody that wanted to come and talk to us while we were out there as well. There was a number of places where we saw pedestrians trying to get across the road where they didn't have as great of a clear zone. There's a few places where we saw visibility wasn't as great for oncoming vehicles with those trying to make turns. There's some intersections with some very sharp angles that can make it a little bit difficult. So there's a number of things like that we saw that we can certainly talk about in our recommendations. So here's a list of potential improvements that were included in the report, at least it's somewhere in the city. So not all of these would be everywhere. Roundabouts, so a couple locations like the Spring Hill intersection up north, Mount Shasta and Lake was another potential area. Improving sight distance, so that could mean clearing some vegetation or putting stop bars a little further out into the intersection so that we can see better. High friction surface allows vehicles to stop a little shorter distance if they have to make an emergency stop. The rectangular flashing beacons, those are little flashing lights that go when the pedestrian pushes the button, so people know somebody's trying to cross the crosswalk. And then, as I said, lots of sidewalk gaps. There's a couple places where the centerline rumble strips, so if you're starting to cross the center line, it makes some noise and wakes you up a little bit. Some areas where we didn't have crosswalks around the whole intersection, just partial crosswalks, and a few places where there might be one needed in the middle of the block, a bit more in terms of bike lanes. There's a few places where we could potentially reduce the number of lanes or the size of the lanes on the road and make more space for things like bike lanes or additional sidewalks. There's one place down in the southern part of the city, we call it a peanut roundabout or a dog bone, where you have intersections that are very close together with a lot of complicated movements. So it's one way to keep traffic from conflicting with each other. A nice easy one is putting those yellow stripes around the signal that you have. It can make it more visible, and believe it or not, actually does reduce certain types of crashes. Same area with the leading pedestrian interval. So when a pedestrian pushes the button, their walk signal comes a little bit before the green light for traffic, which prevents some of those right turn collisions with pedestrians. There's lots of areas where you have intersections that aren't fully ADA compliant just now. So some of these truncated domes and having them positioned correctly would improve some of that. And just on a side note, the city has applied for an ADA transition planning grant through the same source that funded this project. So hopefully we'll hear good news about that. That grant also included some money for sidewalk improvements. And then we have the accessible pedestrian signal or APS push button. So it's just a way to make it's a more modern version of those buttons for pedestrians when they come to the signal and want to push it, want to get it going. It's better for people who aren't as able to hear or see. Transverse rumble strips, so especially in the north and south end of Mount Shasta Boulevard, where you get those higher traffic speeds, that can be a good way to warn folks that there's a stop sign or an intersection coming up. And then there's a few places where additional signage or a little bit more visibility at night would be helpful. And then that ADA transition plan, as I mentioned, that the city's applied for funding for.
Daryl?
Yeah.
Can I interject on a question? One of the things that we've mentioned, but I think it's important if we can get it into the final draft, is to me one of the most vital intersections that needs work is Pine and Lake Street, and clarifying that vehicular geometry there, so the sight lines are clearer and there's a clear path of travel. It seems to be a real problem spot.
Yeah, we'll take a note of that, and we'll get that sorted out. All right. So then, another part of it we were talking about was the transparency and the monitoring of the program as it moves forward. So as part of this, we've established this story map. So this is a website that anybody in the city can go to, or outside of the city, and it basically outlines a lot of what's in that final report as it moves forward. You can walk through this all. You can actually still access that interactive map and take a look at where people might want to put comments on there, so that the city has a way to continually have a conversation with the public, basically. This is an easy, the site is easy to update. So as things change and you have new projects coming along, you can always make those updates and keep this as an active portal for the public to see how things are being done with the safety plan, and to continue to collect information from the public on improvements they'd like to see. So as far as next steps go, we're receiving feedback on the draft safety action plan. Then the idea is to get that final safety action plan adopted, and then pursue those grants, bring the money in, and get some of those improvements built so that we can get the improvements moving forward and reduce those crashes. So coming up in this spring is further from federal money from the Safe Streets for All program. There's one more round of that funding available, and the Highway Safety Improvement Program through Caltrans. So those are both directly safety grants that this plan enables you to pursue. And there's also a number of other programs like the Active Transportation Program and a few others out there in the near term that are opportunities for the city to pursue some additional funding for some of these projects that are being suggested in this plan. And thank you. So with that, any questions or comments, I'd be delighted to take them.
Any questions right now? Yeah, go ahead.
Got a question? Okay. Hey, Daryl, Jeffrey Collings. Can you flip back to 7.2.1 so you know which one I'm addressing? It talks about, after saying that we've, in 5 years from 2019 to 2023, we only had 17 crashes. And that in all those crashes where somebody has complained of any pain all the way to some serious injury, we ranked 94th out of 98, where 1 is the worst, and towards 98 is the best. Am I reading that correctly?
You are.
It's just nice to be proud of something. I mean,
No, I don't want to understate that the Mount Shasta's safety performance is extremely good. So this is not a plan where we're saying the city's a really dangerous place to be by any means. The reason this plan is important for the city is because this is an opportunity for the city to pursue funding to fill in some of those holes and just make the quality of your road system a little bit higher. And there still are some crashes. There are still some injuries. So you have that case to make, and we just want to make sure that you're able to pursue all of those opportunities that are out there to get those dollars and bring them back into the city.
I get the analysis first, funding later sequencing, and I wasn't trying to minimize the many needs that are put forth in the study, but I am confused a little later on, and I don't have the number, but of where it is in your report. But we're like 46th or 47th out of 76. We're kind of in the middle. And I just didn't know how to make sense out of those two things, where on one we looked really great and the other one we looked kind of, well, you're in the middle someplace. And I'm sorry.
So I'm trying to flip to that just to see which one you're referring to directly, but there are several different rankings.
Yeah.
There's the aggregate overall, but then there are sub rankings for specific types of crashes and specific issues, and you do rank a little bit separately in those.
I think it's our OTS ranking that you might be looking at that had us right in the 40s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it here.
Yeah, the Office of Traffic Safety. They've just rebranded, but that's the statewide ranking system that they put together. They classify cities into groups based on population.
Thanks, Daryl.
You bet.
So this question is directed to the city manager. What is our situation with grants regarding the planning on this? We received a grant, did we not? STIP funding and so forth?
For which project?
The narrowing of Lake Street redevelopment.
Oh, we've got a couple things going on. We have the next round of Safe Streets for All, which were, if you remember, it was for creating an inventory of where we're falling down on ADA accessible infrastructure, and how we rank those in terms of constructing them so we're compliant with the law, which is good because we have folks that go to communities and try to find deficiencies and sue, one. And two is for potentially a few $1 million for filling in sidewalk gaps. That's one. We have STIP funding through Caltrans, which are federalized dollars for the reconstruction of Lake Street, which is another grant, and dovetailing with that, we have a state transportation planning grant, which is paying for the conceptual design of active transportation improvements along Lake Street that we can fold into the reconstruction. And we're applying for additional state transportation planning money for the engineering of those active transportation improvements. We're also chasing CDBG dollars for the planning for the full reconstruction of Mount Shasta Boulevard from end to end. But again, it's planning.
Okay, so we'll talk about how any of those grants might help us with number 10. Great presentation. If we could do everything that they recommend, that'd be wonderful. But we are concentrating on Lake Street, right? And
Yes.
number 10? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Casey, before I open up to public comment or anything? Okay.
But I'll say, can I
yeah, go
add
ahead.
that we get a lot of comments, obviously, about the state of our roads, and it's an issue. And I think people realize that there's only so long you can go while you're patching roads before you need to fully reconstruct them. Of course, maintain roads are much easier to keep in that condition than letting them go to the point where they need to be reconstructed. The problem in rural areas that we're finding is there's so few federal dollars that are allocated to, particularly a county, in the county seat, that are then, competed over, and even if you get an award, it's a very small amount of money. We just happen, in this case, to get money. For instance, the STIP project, which is the last big award we got, it's $100,000. I mean, we've got a yawning chasm of need in terms of streets that need to be either reconstructed or repaved. And we're trying to do the best we can with gas tax money and other ways of, just patching and keeping us going until we find a grant that we can grab onto, that we can make a big impact. But we're working on it. It's just, it's an intractable problem, and every city's facing it.
Well, on that note, we'll open it up to public comment. If anybody has anything they want to add to this.
Hey, I think this piggybacks off something that I mentioned a few meetings back when they gave the presentation about the Lake Street thing. So, you know, as my kids are not teeny tiny anymore, my son is my older one, he's 12 now, so he's doing a little more independently, riding his bike or scooter around sometimes to get here and there for shorter, you know, distances, 'cause we're juggling a lot of things. But these projects would be amazing, especially I know if we can get grant funding because, you know, my kid, it's kind of sketchy out there sometimes. The intersections are not good. Sometimes there's no sidewalks. Sometimes there's really bad gaps or it's really uneven because trees and things. I mean, it happens, but you know, he had a couple months back, there was a car was not really paying very good attention and it was kind of a tricky situation. And then with the sidewalk being the way he crashed off his scooter, scraped up his leg pretty bad. So, I mean, could have been way worse. He didn't get hit by a car or anything. Luckily, he didn't have to go get treatment or anything. But, you know, anything we can do to make things better or make things easier for people on bikes or pedestrians, or obviously this is something people are paying attention to. So I support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you still got that chunk that just wobbles on the route. Anybody else with anything to add to this? All right, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for discussion. Yeah, we're just receiving it. Oh, I just didn't know if anybody wanted to comment, say anything. Casey?
Sure. At what, we're not at a point of determining exactly where to allocate resources at this point, right? Or, okay, just want to make sure.
That's the next agenda item.
This presentation, the safety action plan, piggybacks the ALTA active transportation plan. That was a full-scale plan that focused on getting people out of cars, let's say. And there were safety elements to that too. This is a thoroughgoing safety action plan. So we have two pretty very thorough reports on what we should do. Now we have to plan it and construct it. Yeah, and find the money to do both.
All right, well then, since we're done with that, we'll move into number 10, the approval of the contract with Kimley Horn for Lake Street. And Ken, you have the floor on that one.
Members of the council, John, you gave me a great introduction. This is how we're going to plan and build. The city, as you mentioned earlier, got a STIP funding for Lake Street reconstruction, 2 phases process. First is the planning, specs, and cost estimate, the design for the Lake Street reconstruction. That is what we went out for bid here. We went out for an RFQ in October. We received 2 qualified responses. The most highly qualified response came from Kimley Horn, who also just is finishing up our active transportation plan. Mainly, they were very familiar with Lake Street, and I think that helped them put together a very good proposal. The bids came in rather high. Their bid was $463,000. We negotiated on it. They did have a lot of bells and whistles in it. We were able to trim it down a little bit, get it down to about $350,000. Still is a very complete approach. They are incorporating they will incorporate a lot of the information and proposals brought forward in the Lake Street Complete Street study done by Green Dot. That is one reason it is more expensive. This is not going to be simply a reconstruction project. It's going to be a complete street project. Inflation, because this grant was from several years ago, plus being now a more in-depth, more complete design is the reasoning for the increased cost. We will use the $100,000 STIP funding, and we will leverage our gas tax funding to cover the total cost. So I recommend acceptance of this proposal, and we will sign a contract with Kimberly Horn. Do you have any questions?
Pretty straightforward. We've been talking about it. Casey, you guys
Yeah,
have-
I do, actually. I've got a question here. I'm just looking at the numbers here. So by getting this, or by contracting with Kimberly Horn, and then for this, the planning phase and the specifications, construction estimate, all that's in this proposal here, I see the end of it, it says that it will allow us to access the 2.2 million in STIP construction funds.
Yes.
Obviously, things change. You just mentioned inflation. I don't know that that's going to change. By your estimate, that 2.2 million is at what portion of?
You are bringing up an excellent point.
Okay.
The
Saw where I'm
2.2
going.
million will cover pretty much the reconstruction, the complete
Of Lake Street?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
But the complete streets approach, where we do the sidewalks and everything else, that will need additional funding.
Do you anticipate being able to find grant funding for that additional funding as well, do you think?
I think Todd will jump in on that, but Green Dot is helping us chase active transportation funding, which is specifically targeted to pedestrians and bicycles.
So,
thanks, Ken.
You know, we've talked about this here. There's been a trend for a number of years now that, you know, while roadway reconstruction money for vehicles, trucks, is very scarce, the one area where there is a continuation of a lot of funding is if you were doing, in California's eyes, the work of getting people out of their vehicles and contributing to one less trip, as they would put it. So there is still a lot of money for the design, engineering, and construction of active transportation facilities.
Jeffrey, you had a question?
Ken, would you take me through just the headlines of the timeline relative to when actual construction on Lake Street, especially the residential area, was going to occur? It looks like it's 27, or is it 28?
It should be 27. We're a little behind the curve on what the schedule was for the STIP funding, but we're going to be issuing this, hopefully, a contract here, end of the month, first part of January. Already talked to Kimberly Horn. They're ready to dive into this first part of January. Construction package ready to go should be about 6 months. So it should be on the street to advertise May, June, with construction starting probably fiscal year of 27. It could start this coming season.
So actual construction would start in late calendar year 26?
Best case scenario, yes.
Okay. No, thanks, because I was a little confused. I couldn't figure which way this is going. Thank you, appreciate it.
And if I can add one more thing. This agenda doesn't have the actual contract in it. Melissa pointed this out. We'll bring the actual contract to the first meeting in January, but we wanted to get Kimberly Horn rolling on this because we are behind.
And just to clarify, when you say complete streets, fixing everything under the street before the new street goes over it, so we're not cutting up the new street? That is a concern of ugliness?
Yes.
With everything? Okay. Very much a concern. All right, we'll open it up to public comment if anybody wishes to join in. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have another question?
I had one last question, sorry. This one, I understand if you haven't seen this. And you're like, when looking for grants particularly with regards to active transportation, have you seen anything with regards to like, the goal is to get people out of cars and onto bicycles, scooters, walking, skateboards, whatever. Have you ever, are there any grants that you've seen that actually provide for citizens to get those means of transportation, like the bikes themselves or anything like that for people? Is that ever a part of this?
That is not part of this. I've seen programs like that in big cities, but I'm not sure it's state funding. I think it might be more local.
So state funding to buy people the bikes is what you're saying? Is
I wasn't saying that they exist, I was asking him.
No, that's what I'm
I'm
saying.
just curious
Okay.
if there's anything to get people to do the actual active transportation.
I haven't seen it. The first rollout of like a public bike program that I know of was when I worked in New York City. And that was subsidized by Citibank and JP Morgan to get it off the ground. And, up in Portland, some of the companies that had already made a fair amount of income, they provided some subsidies for trials. But it ends up being something that is supposed to be self-funded. I mean, once people understand it, and we've got a demonstration project out there that people aren't falling off and the city's on the hook for a ton of liability, then, they are supposed to be taken care of by the companies. And they make money by the credit card swipes.
Could be onto an entrepreneurial thing. Trade your car in for bikes or something, Turning.
Car's not worth that many bikes.
All right, anybody else? All right, we'll open up to public comment. If anybody wishes to chime in on this. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Bring it back to council, discussion or motion.
I move to approve the contract with Kimley Horn for plans, specifications, constructions, estimate, and contract package for the reconstruction of Lake Street, negotiated upon the proposal of $349,325 to be used by an allocation of $100,000 from STIP and the remainder with gas tax funds.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed is none. All right. Moving on. All right. Moving on to fire engineer's side letter, and Corey, you have the floor.
Council, this is just a side letter to add to the fire MOU and as well as the authorized positions to be included with the fire engineer position on the authorized positions. And the side letter is just stating the amendments to add it to the current fire MOU.
Any questions for the chief? All right, we'll open it up to public comment. Seeing none, we'll close it. We have a motion?
Sure. Let me just, motion, where was it? Motion to add the fire engineer side letter to the fire department MOU.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. All right, moving right along. Number 12, contract extension for WBC campaigns. Todd, you have the floor again.
Yes. So Bill Berry, WBC Campaigns, is our, our folks. It's his company and his researchers that have helped us get polling research and talking to citizens and getting surveys out on the website. His contract expires at the end of December. We have a full year to go before we're able to float a sales tax measure. And, I asked that he tried to reduce his scope as much as possible, but the idea is to keep him on through that election so we can continue to hold additional town hall meetings and include utility flyers, keep an online presence, talk to individual citizens, to business groups and neighborhood groups and other folks, and generally keep up the campaign and the enthusiasm to move us towards the passage of the sales tax measure next November. And so the ask is, the actual extension ask is for $22,000. We're asking for, in total, $27,747. The difference there is some overage on the part of WBC. They were mistaken, and the original contract that was approved was for $45,000, and he thought it was $65,000. So, he was willing to eat it, but it seems like the right thing to do because the guy has done, yeoman's work here. So, wanted to make sure that he gets paid for the work that he's done.
Any questions?
I have a question here. So I noticed that the original contract that we approved for $45,000 had a not to exceed amount in there, which is why we're in this in the first place. I don't see that in this part of it. Is it possible that we could, I understand adding that 57 or the 5,747 on top of it. I agree with you that that sounds like the right thing to do if we are bringing him back to continue working with us through the election. But I'm wondering if we can make a not to exceed part for this 27,747, or is that already just implied?
It would be extension of the original contract, which they should have stuck to the NTE. It was an honest mistake. Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff he didn't charge us for, honestly. Sure.
If we had chosen a different election, like one sooner, this amount would have been much less, I'm assuming.
It would have, we wouldn't be spending anything past November. The November that just passed.
Right, but weren't we looking at?
We were looking at June. We were looking at June for a minute, but there was too many restrictions.
It would
for
be
that date.
less. But here's the thing, if you're in an off-year election, I don't know how many thousands of dollars it is, but the city's got to foot a big bill.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to make sure there was no bias on his part to have us wait until November.
No, actually, we had a discussion here when he presented, and we had the opportunity to make that choice. His argument was that when you've got a tax measure and it's in an off-year election, that it's a lot harder to get people out to vote in support of a tax measure if it's the only thing on the ballot, and your turnout is much lower. As opposed to if you're going to a general election and you've done the ground game and you've continued to hammer things home, you're more likely to get people that are going to come out to the polls, a lot more people, a bigger pool, and therefore you're also more likely to get folks voting for the measure just because you've got that larger turnout, but plus we have more time to build the ground game.
Well, wasn't part of June also that we would have to declare a fiscal emergency
Yes.
to do the June thing, which doesn't look
that's
good
right.
either. Yeah,
Which is
didn't
not a
look
good
good.
look. Yeah.
To the public. This is not his recommendations. So, all right, any other questions? All right, we'll open it up to public comment. Come on up and talk. It's public comment up here.
Is he going to guarantee that it passes for that?
There was no guarantees on any of this. It's just, but I'll add to your question is, we had a sales tax measure that failed recently. We also had a drainage impact fee because it hasn't changed since, I believe, the late 70s. And to get us to a place where we're able to work on slowly replacing all our crumbling drainage infrastructure, we were going from $1 per resident fee that was going to buy you nothing to, I believe the first year was like $24 per resident. And, in a lot of minds, that's not a lot of money, but it's a big increase. So that didn't pass either. And I think one of the reasons we brought this consultant on is the last thing we need right now is another tax measure that fails.
Anybody else?
Aloha.
Aloha.
So this is another thing that we've talked about for a little while now, the 1.5% sales tax increase for all these different ideas. And that's another big reason why we've decided to make this community dinner, just for open Q&A, for all the different topics. We're doing our best to get this information out in layman's terms across 10 different social media things. And it's generating a lot of input, which is really, really, really good. And sometimes we know some of the answer, and sometimes we don't know any of the damn answer at all. And so our only answer is, come meet a council member, councilwoman, come meet somebody in staff. Here's an open Q&A that ask anything. Ask about the housing, workforce housing that's for workers, and ask about the income housing, ask about Danko, ask about the Lake Street. There's so much things about the narrowing streets. We probably got 5 different people yelling at us about that. But it's just such a good thing that we're trying to get the word out in winter, which is a little bit of a struggle, but we're doing actually really good. So we appreciate the support of being able to come. And so it's a reminder that it's always the second Saturday of every month forever. And if we can get through the winter months, then by spring and summer, we should have a strong momentum, wind in sails, logs on fires, bonfires, and a little bit more help to get a 2/3 vote plus 1 by then. And so just letting you all know that we're here to support whichever way, however way we can.
Thank you. And, you know, the folks that you're talking to, just you give them my number.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Close public comment, bring it back. Tessa shall go first. Yeah.
One more question. Part of the proposal is the channel plan and cadence. I know that we had a town hall meeting that he assisted with, but has there been any of these things that he's done up to this point that maybe I've missed, like the weekly updates on the website, the email bulletin, social media, utility inserts? Have those happened, or is that what he's proposing?
They've happened for the town hall, and he's also, put together information that has gone out and, with graphics onto our website announcing the town hall and just, gee whiz information. And, as we get closer to the election, we ramp that up. And I think it's really important, and we would do it whether we hired this guy or not. But are we gonna do it as effectively? That's the point. Is I think we would still hold town halls just because I think they're an effective way, to bear the brunt of the criticism, but also take that in but also be very clear and patiently explain the position that we're in and why we have this need.
Also, City Manager, the little question and comment, but have we settled on 1.5%?
No, we haven't. So we're still getting feedback on all that.
Yeah, I thought so.
We haven't. I mean, if you remember,
We've got till July to decide.
I'm going to get an approximate on this. That in the early survey research and what William Berry stressed is that we're early in this work was done before any town halls or any information was sent out. And he presented the findings, but just that initial brush was that over 78% of people, or I believe 78% of people said they would vote for a 1% sales tax increase, and a 1.5% sales tax increase, it was like 52%. It was very slim. And so one of the things that we need to do is continue to keep up the pressure, but also gauge what we float as a measure. We need 1.5, but it isn't in our best interest to float a measure if, as we take samples near election time, and we're still getting that same result where it's a toss-up. So, we need to ensure that we're pretty sure this thing's going to pass. 1.5% is clearly desirable, but it's a moot point if it just, we spend a bunch of money and we get nothing.
To Chair? My comment part is, a little confusion on my part. I have mentioned many times a 1% sales tax increase instead of a 1.5, and I don't know what the right number is. I'm not for a 1% versus a 1.5%. I don't know what the right number is. I don't know how much money we actually need to take care of the things that we need to take care of, because we really haven't had a lot of feedback from our citizens and across council, at least on a meeting. Maybe there was when I missed a meeting here or there earlier in the year, but I'm not necessarily, just in case there was some kind of confusion about this, I don't know what the right number is. It may be 1.5, but if it is, I think we're going to need a good number with these folks, because we're renewing their contract to help us with a good, solid platform of here's where the money goes. Here are the things we're going to take care of. And I'm not very clear on that, and I just, in case there was any confusion up here, I don't know what the right number is.
Anybody else? Got a motion?
This is not the time to debate the number, right?
No,
this is
not
okay.
debating.
Just
No,
checking.
no.
Jumping the
No.
gun. Go ahead.
So I'm going to move to approve the continuation of the current contract with WBC Campaigns for the purpose of helping the city with a potential tax increase at a cost of $27,747.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed is none. Okay, moving on. Discussion and possible action to set a hearing to revoke the business license of Summit View Inn.
I have to recuse myself from this.
Oh, gotcha.
Customer of mine.
Gotcha. To revoke the business license of Summit View Inn for repeated disregard for the provision of Municipal Code, Chapter 5.12. Todd, you have the floor.
Okay, so the saga of the Loge. We had a hotelier here in 2024 was behind more than 6 months in paying money that isn't the hotel's, but is the collection of bed tax, TOT, on behalf of the city. Repeated, outreach letters, threats, without, with the acknowledgement that they owe it, but no action. And it took us filing a suit. Once that suit was filed, they paid all our back TOT and they paid our legal fees. Again, a month and a half later, it starts again not paying TOT. It's more, it's approaching 6 months again. We file another, the same cajoling, threats, whatever. And we filed another suit. They paid the TOT and they paid the city's attorney's fees. They changed the name of the venue, still owned by the same parent company, to Summit View. They are now in arrears of over 3 months, once again, seeking direction on a public hearing to revoke their business license. I probably would have brought it if we had the 10 days to properly notice a public hearing for the revocation, but I'm proposing to council to consider holding a public hearing for the revocation of the loges, AKA Summit View, at the first meeting in January.
Any questions? Pretty straightforward. Go ahead.
I just have a couple questions. If we revoke their business license, does that preclude the city from going after the back TOT that we're owed?
No.
Oh, excellent. And then I actually have a question for Melissa, I think. This would probably be more for you. Yeah. Just trying to keep you on your toes over there. I realize this is an egregious case. How often do other hoteliers or people that should be paying TOT, how often are other people in arrears? Like a month, 2 months, 3 months?
Okay. That's a good question, and we currently have another hotelier that is past due and is frequently past due. They typically pay between the 15th or the 20th once we've sent them multiple reminders and phone calls. But for the most part, I would say 95 to 98% of our hoteliers pay by the end of the month.
And the one you're referencing is like, they're not 3 months out, they're like 1 month late or whatever.
Yeah,
it's not
they
consistent.
just, instead of paying by the end of the month, they typically pay by the 15th or 20th or so.
They like
But
to go-
multiple reminders, which does take staff
Sure.
time and.
But they like to go 30 days late, right, basically, or?
So their Loge is currently owes for September and October.
No, I'm
No,
talking
I'm
about
sorry,
this-
October and November, and then the other one still owes for November.
Just November, okay, gotcha.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. I mean, I guess what I am curious. We do this. What happens to the property? They just immediately stop being able to act as a hotel? It becomes vacant?
Sell it to the Powers Brothers?
Sure.
So, yeah, a giveaway. It's a price you can't refuse. We immediately, if it passes, I assume it will, we seek an injunction and we close the doors. But I got late word from John Kenny today because I called immediately like I have in the past to put heat on the Loge from a different direction. They've been trying to sell the property, and I've called the broker for it to let him know that they're in arrears, what we're planning to do, our notification of the DA for potential criminal charges, civil. And he knows that he can't sell the property. So today, John Kenny got a call that from the broker saying that what he'd like to do, what he's got agreement on with the owners is that when they sell the property, and they made it sound like they've got a buyer, that they would put into the agreement that for the deal to go through, they have to pay any remaining TOT and other fees. But I don't.
The buyer or the current owners have to pay that as part of the sale?
The buyers would have to pay it out of the tranche of funds, especially whether that's escrow or not. I'm not sure how it's structured, but nothing signed, and so what I told John is we're going to move forward, and and his argument was, that we should probably be careful. We want to do whatever it takes to make sure that we get the funds and not shoot ourselves in the foot. And I said, that's great, but if we don't have a signed agreement, why wouldn't we move forward? Because it's the only way we have to pressure them.
I'm in agreement with that. I'm curious, is it possible to add some sort of contingency to the revocation that says upon sale, it's immediate, you buy this, it comes with a business license or something like that? As long as we get the TO, as long as that's done, just to encourage the sale to somebody who actually will operate a proper hotel.
We can, and I talked to John about this, is the idea that we put a codicil or a rider in here that if, even if we pulled the business license, that restriction is reversed on payment of back TOT.
Okay, we'll open it up to public comment. Seeing none, oh, you got, okay, we got one.
Maybe I'm off, or maybe this is obvious, but typically, don't you just put a lien on the property? And when it changes ownerships, that automatically comes out of escrow before anybody gets their money?
For us to put a lien on a property, especially in a case like this, we actually need to get a court injunction that allows us to do it, because we don't have it as part of our municipal code.
Oh, interesting. Oh, okay.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Got a motion?
I move to approve scheduling a public hearing for the first meeting in January to consider the revocation for the Lodge's business license.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And Stackfleth had to recuse himself. All right, moving on to the budget adjustment of a hiring bonus, and Melissa has the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Back in 2022, there was a resolution that provided a hiring bonus structure for our police and dispatch personnel. And that resolution was to come before the council annually for review and approval. We have had a few signing bonuses that have been given, and we need to get approval to pay those out.
Seeing none, we'll open it up to public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Do we have a motion?
All right, so I'll move to approve resolution CCR-25-31. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta reauthorizing the hiring bonus structure for police officers and dispatchers.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed is none. Okay. And the last item of the night, rearrangement of the mayor for the year of 2026. And Todd, you have the floor, I guess, on this one?
Well, I guess I would pong it back to you, since it's the anniversary of the first video game.
Really?
Yes. That
I'm old enough to have played that.
typically, the last meeting of the year, we elect a new mayor, and the proceedings, I believe, typically start with the current mayor, and we just take the pulse of our council members on who the candidate is. Past practice has been to rotate the position, based on where you are, when you last served. But that, that hasn't been the case in the last election. So I'm kind of turning it back to council to deliberate.
Well, the past practice is that the clerk asks for nominations. So, yeah, the clerk runs, the deputy city clerk runs the election.
Would anyone like to nominate a mayor?
Okay, I'd like to nominate a ticket for mayor, Mr. Glaubman, for mayor pro tem, Tessa Clore.
Wait, I'm sorry, what? Which
Ticket for mayor, Glaubman, for mayor pro tem, Clore. Yes, it has been done. It has been done in the past.
Okay. Then I will nominate Tessa for mayor and Casey Glaubman for mayor pro tem. I thought we usually just did a mayor first and then vice mayor, but if we're doing the two at once.
Do you have any more nominations?
Do I have any other nomination? I'm waiting for this train to go by.
Smart.
Do I have any other nominations for mayor?
That made mine, so.
What do you want?
I'm good with
Then you would hold the vote.
Casey taking this coming year.
Roll call vote.
What was his slate?
Councilmember Klur.
For which one?
Which one? So the first one.
They're both tickets.
Yeah, so I think we
They're
go to
separate.
Stackfleth's first nomination, so I'm a yes.
Wait, what was his nomination?
Casey Mayor, me pro tem.
Casey Mayor, you pro tem. Okay.
I have that exactly reversed. I have it down. We have another train. I have it down as Councilmember Klur for mayor and Casey for mayor pro tem. Do I have that backwards?
My nomination was Glauben for mayor and Clore for
Vice
mayor
Mayor.
pro tem.
And then
Okay, so this initial vote is only for the mayoral ticket, and we'll do mayor pro tem afterwards. So for Casey Glauben for mayor, Klur.
Yes.
Collings.
Yes.
Redmond.
No.
Stackfleth.
Yes.
There?
Correct me if I'm wrong, my vote doesn't actually matter at this.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes?
All right, congratulations.
We have to get up and move now.
Oh, we do that now?
I think so. Yeah, after everyone.
All right.
Congratulations, man.
No, you can't do it by ticket. We've done that in the past. Yeah. So you'd be asking if it would have been Glauben, Clore versus Glauben, yeah. That hasn't happened in a while, but it was back in like 2017 or 18 or something.
This next vote is for Councilmember Klur as mayor pro tempore. Councilmember Klur.
Yes.
Councilmember Collings.
Yes.
Mayor Gladman.
Yes?
Councilmember Stackfleth.
Yes.
Councilmember Redmond.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right. Oh, okay then. All right. Thank you. Right now, I'd like to ask if anybody has any future agenda items.
It's actually outside meetings first.
Ah, yes. Anybody have any outside meetings to report on? No? No? All right, now, any future agenda items? I've got something that I would like to potentially put on there.
You don't have to have a.
You don't have to.
Oh, that's true. Well, I'd still like to take the temperature of council to see if there's a support for this in general.
Okay.
I think I've gotten some feedback from the community, and I think we may have been a little bit premature in deciding to wait and see with a measure regarding rent control in our mobile home facilities. Quite a few members, residents there have come forward to say that they are very concerned, and my concern is that if we wait and see, it becomes too late for a lot of our most vulnerable residents with regards to housing. So personally, I'd like to see at least look into the potential measure. I know Wairika is looking into something similar, and I think it would be a good time to follow suit.
So it would be a rent control difference. There'd be a difference, probably a lower cap than what the state is. Is that what you're?
Correct, yeah. Most of the ones I've seen, it'll be something around the lines of like 3 to 5% plus CPI instead of the 10% that the state mandates.
Or about CPI, you mean, well, we can discuss it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm in
sure.
favor of discussing it.
Okay. All right, that's all.
I think everybody would be.
No, we've talked about it.
Okay.
we go to future agenda.
All right, future agenda items. Any other, oh, go ahead.
Do you want to add, you mentioned an article where the mobile home park in question is actually, was it owned by a hedge fund?
I'm not referring to a specific one in general, but it was, I think, just any of the ones with that in city limits, but not directed at anyone specifically. All right, if that's it, holy crap, that's heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Meeting adjourned.
Excellent.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We'll see you in